There are moments in life when the ground beneath your feet gives way, when every familiar face fades into the background and silence becomes your only companion. At first, it feels like exile, as if life itself has turned its back on you. You reach for understanding, for warmth, for the comfort of connection, but all you meet is emptiness. Yet hidden within that emptiness lies one of the greatest transformations a human being can ever experience, the alchemy of isolation. Isolation is not punishment, it is purification. It is the slow burning away of everything false. It removes distractions, illusions, and the comforting lies that once allowed you to live half awake. When life takes away the noise of others, it forces you to hear the unfiltered voice of your own soul. And that voice, though quiet at first, carries the wisdom of ages. It speaks truths that cannot be found in the crowd, truths that can only be heard in the stillness of solitude. In the beginning, solitude feels unbearable because it mirrors the parts of you you've been avoiding. The world gives you mirrors that flatter, but isolation gives you a mirror that reveals. You start to see the patterns of dependence, the ways you've sought validation, approval, or belonging from those who were never meant to define you. In the loneliness, the illusions crumble. The personas fall away. The roles you played for acceptance dissolve, leaving only what is real. And what is real is not the fragile ego that fears being alone, but the eternal self that stands untouched by the opinions of others. When you are cut off from the world, you begin to confront your own shadows. Every fear, every doubt, every wound rises to the surface. The silence becomes deafening because it holds 1,000 echoes of everything unresolved. But that is the sacred fire of alchemy. It burns away what is untrue, not to destroy you, but to reveal the gold hidden within your pain. The old self resists this fire, begging for escape. But if you can endure it, if you can stay still long enough to witness the transformation, you emerge different, quieter, deeper, unshakably whole. Isolation is where your false identities die. It is where you stop performing and start being. In the absence of an audience, you no longer act for approval. You speak differently, think differently, move differently. You begin to understand that the true journey was never about being seen. It was about learning to see. Every distraction that once kept you comfortable fades, and you start to sense an unseen order behind it all, as though life stripped you of company, not to abandon you, but to introduce you to something far greater than company. Communion with your own essence. There is a strange beauty in realizing that the solitude you feared is actually the space where your soul breathes. It is where the world's expectations finally fall silent. It is where you remember that peace was never outside of you. It was waiting behind the noise all along. The longer you sit in that stillness, the more you begin to trust it. The silence becomes a friend, the emptiness becomes a teacher, and the aloneness begins to feel like alignment. The alchemy of isolation teaches you that strength is not built in crowds. It is forged in quiet. True clarity doesn't come from others telling you who you are. It comes from hearing your own voice when no one else is speaking. In solitude, your senses sharpen. Your intuition awakens. You begin to feel the sacred pulse of life in things you once overlooked. The movement of wind through trees, the rhythm of your own heartbeat, the subtle wisdom in every moment that passes. You start to realize that you are not alone at all. You are surrounded by the intelligence of existence itself. The pain of being isolated is the pain of transformation. The old self dissolving so a truer self can emerge. It's like the chrysalis stage of a butterfly, confined, dark, and seemingly endless. But what happens within that stillness is nothing short of miraculous. The structure of the old self disintegrates completely so that something new can be born. You cannot rush it, and you cannot bypass it. The cocoon is not a prison, it is a womb. When you stop fighting isolation, it changes from something that confines you into something that refines you. Every moment alone becomes an invitation to rediscover your own power. You learn that peace is not the absence of people, it's the presence of self-awareness. You learn that purpose is not found in applause, it's found in alignment. You learn that love is not something to be hunted, it is something to be remembered within yourself. The world tells you that isolation means failure, that being alone means you've lost. But in truth, it is in aloneness that the soul finally meets its own depth. It's in solitude that you stop living for others and start living from your center. You begin to understand that no external approval, no fleeting attention, no relationship, no social role could ever give you what your own presence can. The alchemy of isolation transforms suffering into wisdom, rejection into redirection, and loneliness into liberation. It is not an easy process. It will test your faith in ways nothing else can. It will strip away everything that is not essential. It will bring you to the edge of your own being, where you either fall apart or awaken. But those who surrender to its fire come out purified, unshakable, and sovereign. In the stillness of isolation, you stop chasing connection and begin embodying it. You stop seeking belonging and realize you were never separate from life itself. You discover that solitude was never your enemy. It was your initiation into wholeness. Rejection cuts deeper than most wounds because it pierces not just the ego, but the illusion of belonging we have built around it. To be rejected is to feel unseen, unwanted, and unworthy. It shakes something primal within us, the longing to be accepted by the tribe, the yearning to be chosen. But beneath that pain lies a profound truth. Rejection is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of perception. It is not the end of your worth. It is the unveiling of your truth. Rejection is a mirror, and like all mirrors, it reveals. It doesn't show you who you are through the eyes of others. It shows you who you have believed yourself to be through them. When someone withdraws their love, their approval, their attention, the mind rushes to fill the silence with questions. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? But these questions point outward, away from the real lesson. The truth is never in the one who rejects. It is in the reflection that the rejection casts upon your soul. When people turn away from you, they are not truly seeing you. They are reacting to their own projections. Everyone carries their own fears, expectations, and insecurities, and they will often project those shadows onto others. When you no longer fit the image they created of you, when you outgrow the role they needed you to play, they pull away, not because you have changed for the worse, but because your growth exposes what they have refused to confront within themselves. In this way, rejection becomes a form of revelation. It shows you where attachments were built on illusion. It reveals where you were giving yourself away in exchange for approval. It unmasks the fragility of connections that could not withstand your authenticity. Every no from the world is an invitation to rediscover the yes within yourself. The pain of rejection is the pain of awakening. It burns because it dissolves dependency. It tears down the false identities you built around acceptance. You begin to see how much of your energy was spent trying to be chosen, trying to be enough for those who never truly saw you. But once that illusion breaks, once you realize that rejection doesn't reduce you, it redirects you, you begin to reclaim your power. The mirror of rejection reflects not your inadequacy, but your readiness to stand without external validation. It shows you how much of your identity was entangled in the gaze of others. When that gaze disappears, you are forced to meet yourself directly, without distortion. That meeting is uncomfortable. It exposes your fears, your insecurities, your unhealed wounds, but it is also sacred. Because in that confrontation, you begin to separate your essence from your ego. You begin to understand that who you are is not defined by who stays or who leaves. Rejection is often the universe's way of pulling you out of spaces that no longer align with your evolution. When doors close, it is not because you are unworthy. It is because the next chapter of your growth cannot begin in rooms that no longer hold your resonance. The people who turn away do so because their frequency no longer matches yours. You can mourn them, but you must not follow them backward. The path of your becoming only moves forward. What hurts most about rejection is not the loss of others, it's the collapse of the image you had built around them. It's realizing that the love you offered, the loyalty you gave, the effort you poured, cannot make someone see you if they are determined to look away. But even that realization is a gift. It teaches you discernment. It teaches you to give from wholeness, not from hunger. It teaches you that genuine connection cannot be sustained by self-betrayal. When you look into the mirror of rejection, you will notice something subtle. The pain you feel does not come from what others did, but from the meanings you attach to it. The rejection itself is neutral. It is your interpretation that wounds you. The ego says, they left, so I must not be enough. But the soul whispers, they left, so I could remember that I already am. The same event, two reflections, one of loss, one of liberation. There is a quiet dignity in learning to stand unshaken when others withdraw. You stop chasing explanations, stop pleading for closure, stop performing for love that was never truly rooted. You begin to see that the ones who reject you are often the ones who were never capable of meeting you in your truth. They were mirrors meant to reveal, not companions meant to remain. Rejection strips away the false comfort of belonging and leaves you with the only belonging that cannot be taken, the belonging to yourself. When the mirror of rejection stands before you, don't turn away. Look deeper. See what is being shown, the places within you that still seek permission to exist, the patterns that crave approval, the wounds that fear abandonment. Each rejection brings these shadows to light, not to punish you, but to free you from them. Over time, you begin to understand that rejection is not a closing, it's a cleansing. It removes the people, opportunities, and environments that no longer serve the expansion of your spirit. It clears the path so that alignment can take root where attachment once lived. What you lose in rejection is never real security, it's the illusion of it. What you gain is authenticity, resilience, and a deep knowing that your worth does not fluctuate with external acceptance. The mirror of rejection ultimately transforms the way you see yourself. It teaches you to find validation not through reflection, but through realization. You learn that the love you seek from others is only sustainable when it first flows from within. You learn that the world's no cannot silence your purpose, and that no amount of rejection can diminish what is meant for you. When you stop fearing rejection, you become untouchable in the most profound way. You stop diluting your truth to fit in. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop chasing the mirage of approval. And in that state of inner sovereignty, you discover that the mirror no longer distorts. You see yourself clearly as you are, without condition. There is a moment in every soul's evolution when the applause fades, when the validation that once fed you begins to taste like ash, and when the need to be seen by others starts to feel like a quiet betrayal of yourself. That moment is not a failure. It is a death, the death of approval. And like all deaths of the ego, it comes with pain, confusion, and rebirth. For most of life, we are conditioned to seek approval as proof of our existence. From childhood, we learn to equate acceptance with safety and rejection with danger. We learn that love must be earned, that worth must be proven, that belonging is a reward granted to those who perform correctly. And so we begin to shape ourselves into what pleases others. We edit our truth to fit their comfort. We trade authenticity for belonging, and we carry the invisible weight of trying to be enough for eyes that never truly see us. Approval becomes the drug of the insecure self. It soothes for a moment, then vanishes, leaving a deeper hunger than before. The more we chase it, the further we drift from our own essence. Because the pursuit of approval always requires a mask, and every mask distances you from the truth of who you are. The longer you wear it, the more you forget your original face. The death of approval begins quietly. It begins the first time you say something true and someone disapproves, but you feel lighter. It begins the first time you disappoint someone and realize the world didn't end. It begins the moment you sense that your soul is suffocating under the weight of pretending. And once that awareness takes root, you can no longer go back. You start to notice how much of your identity was built around being pleasing, how often your yes meant I'm afraid to lose love, how often your silence was a disguise for survival. This realization burns because it exposes the contract you unconsciously signed, the agreement to betray yourself in exchange for belonging. You start to see that the need for approval was never love. It was fear disguised as connection. It was the desperate attempt of the ego to control perception, to manipulate acceptance, to ensure that others would never withdraw their gaze. But every time you lived for their gaze, you turned away from your own. When approval begins to die, loneliness often follows. The people who once celebrated you may fall away because they were attached not to your truth, but to your compliance. They loved the version of you that made them comfortable, not the one that made them think. They admired your reflection, not your reality. And when you stop mirroring their expectations, they label your authenticity as arrogance, your boundaries as betrayal, your growth as rebellion. But what they call rebellion is simply resurrection, the return to yourself. The death of approval feels like isolation, but it is actually liberation. It is the moment when your self-worth detaches from the shifting opinions of others. You stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, do I respect myself? You stop measuring success by applause and begin measuring it by alignment. The noise outside quiets, and the voice within grows louder, steadier, wiser. That voice is not trying to impress anyone. is trying to guide you home. The ego resists this death. It panics at the thought of being unseen. It believes that if others stop approving, your existence loses meaning. But the soul knows otherwise. The soul understands that visibility is not vitality, that attention is not affection, and that truth does not need to be validated. It only needs to be lived. Once you cross that threshold, approval no longer holds power over you. You may still appreciate kindness, recognition, or praise, but they no longer define your direction. You begin to realize that those who truly love you never required you to perform. They were drawn to your essence, not your image. Their presence feels like air, unforced, natural, sustaining. And in contrast, those who demanded your conformity begin to feel heavy, suffocating. You start to discern between genuine connection and conditional validation. That discernment is one of the first gifts of inner freedom. The death of approval also reveals a deeper paradox. The less you seek it, the more authentic respect you attract. Because authenticity has gravity. People may not always agree with it, but they feel its truth. Those who are lost in performance fear it, while those who are searching for their own truth recognize it as a mirror. When you stop trying to please everyone, you stop living as a reflection of their desires and start existing as a revelation of your own. But this death demands courage. It requires walking through moments when no one claps, when your truth isolates you, when the silence feels endless. It demands that you let go of identities built on being good, liked, or accepted. You will grieve them. You will feel the ache of invisibility. But in that void, something miraculous happens. You begin to feel real for the first time. You begin to breathe without needing to be watched. You begin to create without needing to be praised. Approval is borrowed energy. Authenticity is self-sustaining fire. When you stop borrowing from others to feel alive, your inner flame ignites. It doesn't flicker with every opinion. It doesn't dim to keep others comfortable. It simply burns, steady and unwavering, illuminating the path that is uniquely yours. The death of approval is not about becoming indifferent or hardened. It's about becoming sovereign. It's about realizing that love without freedom is manipulation, and acceptance without authenticity is imprisonment. It's about understanding that no external applause can replace the quiet peace of self-acceptance. When approval dies, peace is born. You stop performing for the world and begin living for truth. You stop asking what others think and start listening to what your soul knows. You stop chasing validation and begin embodying value. And though the world may not always celebrate this transformation, your spirit recognizes it as liberation, your heart recognizes it as truth, and your life begins to move with the rhythm of something eternal. There comes a point when life strips away everything you thought would protect you. Your support systems, your relationships, your status, your sense of belonging. The structures you built to feel safe begin to crumble, and the hands you once trusted to hold you suddenly let go. It is in those moments, when the outer world collapses, that you are forced to turn inward and discover the only sanctuary that can never be taken from you, the inner fortress. The inner fortress is not made of stone or pride. It is built from truth, forged in pain and sealed with self-awareness. It rises not from avoidance, but from endurance, from walking through every storm that once threatened to destroy you. It is not about hardening yourself to the world, but about strengthening yourself so deeply that the world's chaos can no longer penetrate your peace. When you begin to build your inner fortress, you first encounter the ruins, the debris of your dependency. You see all the ways you leaned on others to define your worth, all the ways you gave your power away for comfort, all the times you believed safety existed outside of you. The collapse of illusion feels brutal because it exposes your vulnerability. But that vulnerability is the soil where resilience takes root. The breaking of false security is what makes space for real security to grow. Every wound, every disappointment, every betrayal becomes a brick in your foundation. You begin to realize that what hurt you was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to teach you what cannot be destroyed. Pain, when faced with consciousness, becomes material for construction. Each time you survive something that should have broken you, you gain a deeper understanding of your own strength. You start to recognize that endurance is not weakness, it is wisdom in motion. The inner fortress is built in silence. It is built when you sit with your emotions instead of escaping them. It is built when you stop explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. It is built when you choose integrity over approval, peace over validation, stillness over reaction. Every choice that aligns you with truth strengthens the walls of your inner sanctuary. There is a sacred loneliness that accompanies this building. It is not the loneliness of being unwanted, but the solitude of being reborn. You start to feel the difference between being alone and being at peace. The world may no longer feel familiar because you no longer operate from the same illusions. But even as people drift away, you begin to sense a deeper presence within you, a quiet intelligence, a calm observer, a power that cannot be swayed by circumstance. That is your fortress coming alive. The outer world teaches dependence. The inner world teaches self-reliance. When you stop needing others to regulate your emotions, you reclaim your authority. You begin to realize that no one can give or take your peace unless you grant them that access. The same events that once would have shattered you now only ripple across the surface of your awareness. You become less reactive, more rooted. You no longer chase understanding, you embody it. Building the inner fortress does not mean closing your heart. It means guarding your energy. It means knowing when to open and when to withdraw, when to engage and when to observe. It means loving without losing yourself, helping without being consumed, and forgiving without returning to what wounded you. Boundaries are not walls that keep love out. They are gates that protect it from being wasted. Inside the fortress, you begin to see life differently. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as the architect of response. The world can be unpredictable, people can be fickle, but your reaction remains your domain. You learn to breathe through chaos, to pause before reacting, to trust that stillness reveals more than haste ever could. You stop being tossed by external storms because you have found the eye of the storm within yourself. The inner fortress also demands honesty. You cannot build strength on denial. You must face your fears, your patterns, your unhealed wounds, and meet them without judgment. Every layer of self-awareness becomes another layer of protection. The fortress is not built by pretending to be invincible. It is built by knowing your weaknesses and embracing them as teachers. True strength is not the absence of pain, it is the mastery of it. As you grow within this space, your energy changes. You begin to attract differently. You no longer seek those who drain you, because your spirit now vibrates at a frequency of wholeness. You no longer tolerate manipulation, because peace has become your highest priority. You no longer chase validation, because your foundation no longer shakes when others disapprove. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not detached. You are discerning. You are no longer desperate for connection, because you have already connected with the deepest part of yourself. The inner fortress becomes a temple for your truth. Within it, you can hear your intuition clearly, the quiet guidance that the noise of the world once drowned out. You begin to trust your instincts more than opinions, your intuition more than information. Every decision starts to flow from alignment, not anxiety. You begin to live from the inside out instead of the outside in. In the past, you may have believed strength meant fighting back, proving your worth, or winning approval. But within the fortress, you discover a different kind of strength. The power of restraint, the power of silence, the power of walking away without explanation. You learn that true power is calm, not loud, stable, not reactive. It does not need to announce itself, because it is rooted in presence. The world outside may continue to test you. People may still misunderstand you. Life will still bring uncertainty and challenge, but none of it can touch the center you have built. Because your security no longer depends on outcomes, it depends on awareness. Your peace no longer depends on agreement, it depends on alignment. You have learned that protection does not mean hiding from life. It means meeting it from a place of inner wholeness. The fortress within you is not built overnight. It is built through countless moments of choosing yourself when it would have been easier to betray your truth. It is built every time you rise from heartbreak, every time you forgive without surrendering your boundaries, every time you trust the process instead of forcing control. Slowly, quietly, faithfully, you construct a home inside yourself that no one can invade. There comes a time in every life when the old ways of seeking power begin to crumble. The pursuit of control, validation, recognition, and dominance starts to feel empty, like chasing shadows that vanish the moment you grasp them. What once felt like achievement begins to feel like imprisonment. This is the moment the soul calls for something deeper, not the illusion of power that comes from the outside world, but the authentic power that rises from within. Authentic power is not about control, it is about coherence. It is not about ruling others, it is about ruling the self. It is the force that emerges when your thoughts, emotions, and actions align with your truth. But to reach that state, something within must first die. The false power, the kind built on fear, image, and ego, must dissolve. That dissolution feels like collapse, but it is actually the beginning of the rebirth. The death of false power often begins with humiliation. You may lose what once made you feel significant: a title, a relationship, a reputation, or an illusion of control. The ego resists this loss because it built its identity on those external anchors. It panics when they fall away. But this collapse is sacred. It is the breakdown that makes space for breakthrough. When everything that was built on illusion falls, what remains is truth. And truth is where real power begins. The rebirth of authentic power begins in surrender, not in struggle. It begins the moment you stop trying to control life and start allowing it to shape you. You realize that power is not about forcing outcomes, it's about trusting the process. It's about standing so firmly in your integrity that even when the world shifts around you, you remain centered. You stop seeking dominance and start embodying presence. You stop needing to prove and start choosing to be. True power is quiet. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't shout or threaten. It moves like still water, calm, reflective, unstoppable. When you are aligned with your authentic power, you no longer need to convince anyone of your worth. You no longer need to defend your path. You become grounded in self-awareness, and that awareness radiates strength without effort. People can feel it before you speak. They sense it not in what you do, but in the energy you carry. The path to authentic power requires facing your shadows, the parts of you that crave validation, the parts that fear rejection, the parts that cling to superiority. All must be acknowledged and integrated. You cannot reclaim your true strength while denying your weaknesses. The shadow, when embraced, becomes a source of wisdom. It teaches humility, compassion, and emotional depth. Every time you confront a part of yourself you once rejected, you reclaim the energy you lost to fear. That reclaimed energy becomes power. Authentic power is born through pain, but sustained through awareness. It asks for radical honesty. It demands that you stop pretending, stop performing, stop manipulating to be loved. It asks you to stand naked in your truth, even when it costs you comfort. It is not about perfection, it is about presence. You stop trying to be more and start realizing that what you are is already enough. The moment you stop reaching outward for confirmation, you begin to feel the strength that was within you all along. This rebirth is often misunderstood. To those still chasing external validation, your calm looks like arrogance, your detachment looks like coldness, your independence looks like rebellion. But what they cannot see is that your peace was earned. They do not see the nights you walked alone, the pain you faced without witnesses, the identities you shed to become who you truly are. Authentic power does not come from ease. It is born in the furnace of transformation. When you reclaim your power, you begin to live from alignment instead of reaction. You stop being ruled by emotional turbulence. You no longer give energy to what drains you or fight battles that compromise your peace. You start to respond instead of react. You understand that silence can be stronger than argument, withdrawal can be wiser than confrontation, and stillness can be more powerful than resistance. This is not passivity, it is mastery. The rebirth of authentic power is also the awakening of compassion. Once you no longer need to dominate others to feel strong, you start to understand them. You see that those who try to control others are enslaved by fear, and those who manipulate are prisoners of insecurity. You no longer take their behavior personally because you see their suffering behind the mask. This vision doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. It allows you to move through life with strength and grace rather than defense and bitterness. Authentic power is deeply spiritual. It is not given by the world, and therefore it cannot be taken by it. It is the knowing that you are guided even in uncertainty. It is the unshakable faith that everything that leaves does so to make space for something truer. It is the calm certainty that your worth was never dependent on external approval. The more you live from that awareness, the more you realize that life itself begins to align with you. Opportunities, people, and experiences start to flow naturally because they resonate with your energy, not your effort. The rebirth of authentic power transforms the way you move through existence. You stop seeking to influence through force and start influencing through presence. You no longer measure success by what you acquire, but by what you embody. You stop trying to change others and focus instead on maintaining your vibration of truth. From that space, your life becomes a reflection of your inner harmony. You attract peace because you are peace. You attract respect because you respect yourself. You attract authenticity because you live authentically. In this rebirth, you discover that real power is not about having control. It's about having clarity. It's not about being above others. It's about being anchored within yourself. It's not about being invincible. It's about being aligned. The strength that emerges is no longer reactive or defensive. It is fluid, adaptable, and free. You begin to see that the greatest power is not to change the world, but to remain yourself within it. And as you continue to live from this state of awareness, you stop identifying with the temporary fluctuations of success and failure. You understand that both are fleeting, but your essence is eternal. The more you live in alignment with that truth, the more unshakable you become. You stop looking for strength in circumstance and start finding it in consciousness. This is the quiet revolution within, the rebirth that no one else can give you and no one else can take away.